Well, hey, they weren't going to go 162-0, right? I mean, we got time. There's time to figure this stuff out. Game 1 is in the books. We recap it next on Locked On Brewers.
You are Locked On Brewers, your daily Milwaukee Brewers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, everybody. Happy Friday. Baseball season has officially arrived, and thanks for making us, Locked On Brewers, your first listen of the day. I'm Dominic Cotroneo, statistician for Bally Sports Wisconsin. He is Vinny Rottino. He is one of the broadcasters on Bally Sports Wisconsin. We are the only daily podcast dedicated to your Milwaukee Brewers, bringing you all the best coverage you need to follow the Brewers all season long. Follow us on Twitter at Locked On Brewers. You can also subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts, and also subscribe to us on YouTube, where we post all the video side of our podcast episodes there as well. Okay, Vinny, first of all, as we record this on Thursday on this opening day, I want to wish you a happy birthday, my friend, not a day over 21.
Thank you. My goodness, you're right. I'm a little bit older than that. I'm 42. Can you believe it? Oh, my goodness. But thank you very much for the happy birthday wishes. Yeah, I mean, I share a birthday with Craig Kashan and Josh Hader, so I'm in good company there.
Yep, so that's pretty fun. So as you were probably listening to this on Friday, we always record the night before, so I wanted to make sure we got that in for Vinny here today. All right, Vinny, opening day does not go the Brewers' way by a final of 5-4. The Cubs with the victory down at Wrigley on a cold, blustery day. We saw exactly what you'd expect out of Wrigley. A couple of wind balls found a couple of holes, some balls that looked like they were going to be foul, go fair. A couple of balls that looked like they would be fair, go foul. It was just a classic windy day in the Windy City down at Wrigley Field. But overall, before we get into the details, what were your takeaways in general from this one?
My overall feel for the game was just that it was just a flat game by the Brewers, I thought, just all the way around. I mean, with I know we're going to get into it, but with Burnes on the mound, you thought that, against Hendricks, who did not have a good year last year, you thought they were just going to come out and dominate, and they really didn't. And there's a number of reasons why that is, but it was just a flat feeling for that game. You felt like the players weren't really comfortable at all, right? You felt like there was just almost too much adrenaline for the guys, and they wanted it a little bit too bad. And then the conditions were obviously very difficult to play in, especially coming from Arizona. That's hard to do. So, it was just a flat feeling for the game.
Final line scores in this one were for the Cubs. They had 5 runs on 8 hits, no errors. They left 6 runners on base. For the Brewers, they went 4 runs on 10 hits, no errors as well, and they left 9 runners on base, which is going to be a big part of our second segment talking about the offense. But let's start with the starter, the reigning Cy Young winner, Corbin Burnes. Look, he's allowed to look human, okay? And he looked human today. There were times that he got it back in gear, and then there were times it wasn't so great. I mean, the first couple of innings, it was clear to us watching from the studio with Tim Dillard and Craig Kashan, the cutter just was not there today. I mean, there was nothing working for him with the cutter. He wasn't able to throw it for a strike. He wasn't getting swings and misses on it. It just looked like the Cubs just were not fooled at all by the cutter. What did you see from his cutter today?
Couple of things for the cutter for me is one, it was flat. And I think the reason why it was flat, he wasn't in a good rhythm with his delivery. I felt like he was rushing a little bit, and that is very easy to do as a pitcher. All of a sudden, you don't see it quite move as much. You don't see the hitters react as much to the pitch, and all of a sudden you try and do a little too much as a catcher. I experienced this a million times with pitchers. They don't feel like it's moving as much as it should, depending on whatever pitch they're throwing. So they try and overthrow, and that makes it even worse. And then the other thing was command. So you overthrow, and now your command is off too. It just looked like he was out of sync in general with his delivery. I know that he found it probably in like the 3rd or 4th inning or whatever. But yeah, I agree. The cutter was never there for him. That's his bread and butter. And then the command of the cutter wasn't there either. And so that's the big takeaway for me, that the command was just not there. And again, it was out of sync delivery for me. And it just didn't feel like stuff was coming out of his hand real crisp like you saw, obviously, last year, pretty much every single start.
And you do mention the 3rd inning is when it seemed like the cutter got back into shape. I gave this stat to Jeff Levering. We never got it in, but we did use it in the postgame show. The fact that Corbin Burns' cutter, in the first 2 innings, he threw 22 cutters in the first 2 innings. Only 9 of them were strikes. So that means called strikes, swings and misses, foul balls, or balls put in play. Only 9 strikes out of 22 cutters on a guy that uses the cutter as the majority of his pitches more than 50% of the time. So those first 2 innings, it was terrible. Then from the 3rd inning to the end of his start, he threw 25 cutters. 16 of those were strikes, so he clearly found it, but it seemed like he dipped into the well with the slider was working, and even the 2-seam fastball, he brought that back out of the well. What did you like from those 2 pitches today?
I like both those pitches, and don't forget, he actually got back into some counts with a changeup, too. He threw a couple of nice changeups as well. I know he did leave one up, forget to which batter, but he kind of left one up. Hayward during that 3-run inning. Or no, I think they just scored the 1 in that 1 inning. Hayward laced a single to center field, but the changeup, that was encouraging to see. Usually that's like the last pitch a pitcher's going to want to throw when he's in trouble and can't find his bread and butter, right? The last pitch he's going to throw is it's essentially his 5th best pitch, even though it is disgusting when it's right. So it's, I mean, he couldn't find it, and he was just searching pretty much all game, and then he did go to the well to that slider, and unfortunately, that was the pitch that hurt him, right? He left that backup slider up to Nico Hoerner, and he drove it out of the ballpark. The takeaway for me for Burnes is that 3 walks, right? I mean, this guy, he walked the first batter of the game, so you could tell right from the get-go he was not comfortable on the mound today. And obviously that's, 3 walks. It's just something that is such an anomaly for this guy and something we're not used to. He'll get it back. It was just opening day and it was cold. It's my opinion, and I don't think he had a real good feel for the baseball today.
Well, and to your point, too, it was actually the coldest start in his career based on game time temperature. I mean, most starters are never going to admit, like, oh, that didn't impact me at all. I shouldn't worry about stuff like that, which most should. They're big league players, and everybody plays in the same conditions. But, look, if you haven't done it before and you're from California, there is something to that.
Yeah, exactly. There's definitely something to that, and especially when you're coming from Arizona and the conditions are absolutely perfect. You're coming into a hostile environment in Wrigley Field. It's freezing. It's windy. People forget about the wind. The cold doesn't necessarily bother you that much. It's the wind. I hated playing windy baseball. It was the worst. It's the worst as a fielder. It's the worst as a hitter. I gotta imagine it's terrible to pitch when it's super windy as well. Like you feel like it's blowing you around on the mound. So that I don't want to make excuses for Burnes. Just throw this one out. Too bad it was opening day, right? And we're all excited about it, but definitely throw that outing out because it was a dud, one of a rare dud for Corbin Burnes.
He gets a no decision. He goes 5 innings, 4 hits, 3 runs. They were all earned, 3 walks, 4 strikeouts, and the home run, as you mentioned, to Nico Hoerner. That homer made it a 3-1 ball game through 5 innings, and then that was the last inning that Burnes had worked and turned it over to the bullpen with Aaron Ashby. We'll talk about the bullpen. We'll talk about the offense here in just a second. Before we do that, of course, we're going to tell you about our friends at Built Bar. Have you tried their puffs? They're awesome. I mean, it's like a protein-infused marshmallow, but that's still underselling it. They've got amazing flavors just for the puffs, and you can see all of their flavors at Built.com. But if this marshmallow thing isn't your thing, the Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate, 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. They got their entire macros chart at Built.com as well. All their flavors for the bars include mint brownie, coconut almond. They've had white chocolate cookies and cream. They've had a whole bunch of fun stuff going on at Built.com. And if you want to try out our friends at Built, you can use our promo code LOCKED15. That's LOCKED15 at Built.com to get 15% off with the promo code LOCKED15. So it was a 3-1 ball game heading into the top of the 6th inning. Brewers didn't get anything done there in the top of the 6th, seeing old friend Daniel Norris grounding into a double play. But then the bottom of the 6th, it was Aaron Ashby, and he got himself into and out of trouble thanks to a double play. Also had a wild wind ball in this, and they gave Ashby a clean inning, and they tried to get him back out there for the 7th inning, and that's when things started to go haywire for the Brewers bullpen. Jake Cousins came in with a runner on second base. It was a seeing-eye double by pinch hitter Clint Frazier that got just down the left field line. At this point, by the way, in the bottom of the 7th inning, the Brewers have tied the game 3-3 thanks to an RBIs from Willie Adames and Christian Yelich, an RBI double and a sac fly respectively. So bottom of the 7th, a 3-3 game. a one-out double by Clint Frazier off the bench, and then a ground ball up the middle allowed Frazier to get to third. It was a put-out, though, 4-3. So with 2 outs, they go with Jake Cousins to go right on right with Wilson Contreras. And lo and behold, Wilson was not happy about getting hit by a pitch, even though he stands right on top of the plate. I don't know why Wilson gets mad every time. Look, he stands right on top of the plate. It was a 2-1 count in a tie game. No one's throwing at you, man. No one's throwing at you.
He just does it to intimidate, I think, or maybe he just doesn't have that much feel for the game in general. I think it's probably a little bit of both. Yeah, I mean, Jake Cousins was not trying to throw at him. Jake Cousins looked to me like he was a little bit not overmatched, just a little bit too much adrenaline, I would say, in that situation. This is a situation that the Brewers are going to need Jake Cousins to be able to get outs, right? And need him to kind of get comfortable on the mound in those situations, in those leverage situations. I think he will. I think this is a matter of being opening day, a little bit too much adrenaline. But yeah, one got away from him and hit Wilson Contreras. That dude needs to just chill out.
What do you see from a pitcher? I mean, if you were catching him per se, what do you see to tell you that there's too much adrenaline, that there's too much hype going on?
He just, I hate to use the word, scared, but it's just a feeling that I get when I'm watching him in that situation. You got the same feeling and the same perspective when you saw like a guy like Aaron Ashby after the wheels started to come off last year in his debut. You just start to look. I felt this way almost every time when I was in the major leagues. Like, it's a little bit daunting. It's a little uncomfortable. Doesn't feel like, the minor leagues, or it doesn't feel like a situation that you're totally comfortable in. That's what it looked like to me. Jake Cousins looked like in that at-bat. He settled in, he got comfortable, and he had a great 8th inning, 3 up, 3 down. That was a great job of him bouncing back. But in that moment is a little bit, again, I hesitate to use the word big, because I think this guy is going to be really good and a key piece for the Brewers bullpen this year. I just felt like it was a little big today, opening day, Wilson Contreras, game on the line type of a thing.
Ian Happ had himself a day too, because the next at bat was the big one. So now you got runners on the corners with 2 outs. You couldn't get the guy that you were supposed to get out with right on right with Contreras. Now you're facing the switch hitter and Ian Happ hitting from the left side, which is the side that he prefers to hit on. And he threw some really tough sliders that he laid off of. He threw 4 sliders in a row, wasn't able to get him to swing, and then finally on the 3-2 pitch, he throws one more slider, and this one was left up down the middle, and Ian Happ rips a double. It almost went out of the yard, too. I mean, he hit that ball. It was the hardest hit ball of the day, 106 miles an hour off the bat. A double to left center. It scores 2 runs, which ultimately was the difference. It made it 5-3 at the time. The Brewers would get one back in the top of the 8th, but that would be it. Just a slider that was caught too much of the plate there, it looked like, is all it really was.
The big pitch of the game. 3-1, he did throw the slider for a strike, and so Ian Happ was definitely sitting on it 3-2, and it looked like he was sitting on it with that swing that he took. And it was a flat slider as well. It hung up there. Cousins he definitely backed off it. The ones before earlier in the count to get to 3 balls were yanked, were the out pitch sliders that really didn't work in those situations. Because he needed to get ahead. And so he kind of left the cookie up, and Ian Happ absolutely murdered that ball. Down, it was down right in his wheelhouse, about, just above the knees, right down the middle, and he just leaned on it. And I thought it was gone off the bat. I thought Locane thought it was gone off the bat, and, luckily stayed in the ballpark, gave the Brewers a chance to try and get back into this game, but obviously they couldn't.
He would escape there in the 7th, and you mentioned the 1-2-3 8th inning for the Cubs. The Brewers did get one back in the top of the 8th off Rowan Wick. Leadoff single up the middle by Rowdy Tellez. He went 2 for 4 today. We also haven't mentioned Kyle Hendricks, how good he looked today. We do need to tip our cap to him. 7 strikeouts, 6 of them were on the changeup. Of the first 15 batters he faced in this game, he had all 7 of his strikeouts. The Brewers figured out that changeup eventually, just didn't get anything going early against him.
Yeah, when Locane is swinging at the changeup like he was, like way out in front of it, you know that something's really working. Locane's not a guy that is fooled that easily. And Colton Wong, same idea. Rowdy Tellez, he really had no idea. And Rowdy's not a guy that to me, he's not the type of hitter that chases the way that he was chasing on that changeup. So it was absolutely filthy. And the thing that was impressive to me about Kyle Hendricks today was he was spotting the changeup on the black away. And that's something that requires a ton of touch and feel. So think about it. You're throwing the changeup with these three fingers. So you don't have much dexterity in these three fingers, but he does, right? He's kind of trained himself, obviously, to have that feel to be able to get it to those edges. That's what's so impressive about what he's able to do. And it doesn't look much different than the fastball out of the hand, even on TV, right? Sometimes you can't tell what's coming out of his hand on TV, but just a tremendous job by him. I thought it was a really, really good start by him.
And for folks listening on the podcast, the three fingers that Vinny held up were the middle finger, the ring finger, and the pinky finger is how you rip that changeup away with the thumb moving away. It's a beautiful pitch when you can execute it right. The great equalizer, use the cliche. But offensively, 1 for 10 with runners in scoring position today for the Brewers. In fact, they had the leadoff man on in 7 consecutive innings. They had a base runner in 8 of 9 innings. I mean, they were getting on base, but as we saw for chunks of last season, the big hit eluded them, going 1 for 10 with runners in scoring position.
Yeah, here's the thing. Counsell said right at the end of the game, this is the start of a marathon. So you don't want to get ahead of ourselves and say, here we go again, where's the offense, right? Because I know that's been the talk of all offseason. Last year was the talk, if the offense could keep pace with the pitching, blah, 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 blah. So you don't want to get ahead of yourself, but it did feel like, my goodness, here we go again. The fact that they couldn't get that big hit, that they couldn't string things together, that their at-bats were that poor, especially against a soft-throwing Kyle Hendricks, and get punch out after punch out after punch out. You don't want to see that from this group. I think that's not going to happen. I think this team is going to figure it out offensively. There's too many good hitters in this lineup to not figure it out. And they strung together a bunch of quality at-bats. I'm just chalking all those stats up. 1 for 10 runners in scoring position. I'm just chalking it up to this team looked like they wanted it a little too bad. There's an element in baseball where you just gotta play, you gotta have fun. Super cliche to say that, but there's also an element of you can't care that much. Okay, if that makes sense. You almost have to not care and just kind of go play. I know it's a weird feeling, it's a weird thing, but they'll get there. And it looked like they were trying too hard today. They looked like they were trying to win the World Series today, and this is game 1. So they'll figure it out.
We'll wrap up this segment with a little switch over to Craig Counsell's day. I know with the universal DH today, he chose Andrew McCutchen to use his DH, but a lot of folks are wondering, well, now you lose an advantage of manager of having Craig Counsell being able to pull the strings. Look, he almost emptied his bench. And how about the move to bring in Victor Caratini, having never caught a bullpen of any of these guys, to trust the front office that he's ready to do it and he's going to begin. They decided to pinch hit Omar Narvaez in a spot that didn't work out for Tyrone. He ended up grounding into a double play. And then bring in Victor Caratini to catch Aaron Ashby and to catch the final 3 innings for a team that he just met literally as he arrived Thursday morning.
Well, that's a testament. First of all, a couple things on this. I'm glad you brought this up. This is really, really interesting, I think. Couple things. First, I think Craig Counsell is very gutsy to lose your catcher your starting catcher, and you're only going to go with your backup for the last 3 innings. So if something were to happen to Caratini, a foul tip, something, then Jace Peterson's catching, and that just spells trouble. Okay. That said, yeah, Caratini. Kudos to the scouting department or whoever's scouted Caratini to understand that this guy is that good of a game manager. I've always liked this guy. He's really taken a step in terms of the ability to handle a staff and the ability to have feel for a pitching staff and gain their trust, because he did it day 1, right, to a guy that's probably the hardest guy to catch on their staff, with the exception of maybe Corbin Burns, Aaron Ashby, because this dude's got 97 miles an hour sinkers, stuff that is disgusting, and he doesn't necessarily have the greatest pinpoint command as of yet in this point in his career. Those guys are really hard to catch. Caratini had to do it, and he didn't know any of these guys. Yeah, I mean, but it's a good sign too for the Brewers, Dom. Think about that. Like, this guy can catch. He can catch and throw, and he can hit a little bit too. So I love this trade. I know we hadn't talked about it yet, but I love this deal. I think he's going to be a very integral part of this team. And the last thing I'll say on this, I thought I don't love to play Monday morning quarterback, but I wouldn't have taken out Narvaez in that situation. I mean, he's one of your better hitters. I know he didn't show it in spring, but I don't know. I just didn't. I was a little uneasy about that. I'm glad Tyrone Taylor was utilized, but maybe you could have saved him for a better spot later, especially Narvaez is one of your better, players. He's all-star last year.
And furthermore, let's say, you talk about the emergency catcher being Jace Peterson. Let's say if something were to happen, Lorenzo Cain, he gets hit by a pitch in the foot, gets hit by a pitch in the fan, he has to leave the game, and now you've already burned Tyrone Taylor. I mean, it goes multiple ways. Now, again, I'm not playing Monday morning quarterback. Craig Counsell has been a Manager of the Year finalist 3 times in his career. He knows what he's doing, but it just goes to show you, it's a great example, like you said, gutsy. Counsell has full trust in every single one of his 26 guys on the roster, which is obviously felt in that clubhouse, and that's why he felt that Victor Caratini, he brought him for a reason, and they wanted to use him. And heck, he even at the plate, he got a double. It was left-stranded. He did his job at the plate. He did well enough behind the plate. It's an encouraging day one and a heck of a story to tell.
There's one other point that I'm gonna play. I'm saying I don't want to play Monday morning quarterback, but I'm bringing it up twice on first game of the season. Is the Mike Brasso pinch hit for Jace. I think Jace is just too good of a player to take him out in that situation, especially Daniel Norris is a guy that's like 90-91 with a little slider. We all saw it last year. It's not overpowering stuff. Jace has proven that he can stay in there and hit lefties, and he doesn't chase. He gives you a quality at bat. That was the only other thing I was just like, I'm wondering on that move right there as well. But obviously it's easy to say that Brasso, punched out in a big spot later. But, again, I'm not saying that that's why I disagreed with that particular move. I just think Jace is too valuable of a player in multiple ways.
Fair enough. Now we'll move ahead and look ahead to tomorrow's contest, Game 2 of the series after the Brewers fall in Game 1. Before we do that, remind you about Bet Online, as they are the #1 source for all your sports betting needs and information. You can still do some bets on baseball up there right now. And, of course, it is Masters Week. It's my favorite week of the year. Shout out to Sungjae Im, 5 under yesterday. Did you watch any of the golf, by the way? I had one screen on. I'm not going to lie, Vinny. I was keeping an eye on the Masters. And how about Tiger, man? Tiger's hanging around. This is a whole lot of fun to watch. But Bet Online, they've got you covered with everything you can need to know about sports wagering. They've got Masters odds up there. You can use your website or you can use your mobile device today to learn more about the trends and get in on the action. Bet Online is where the game starts. Tomorrow, Game 2. All right, you flush this one and you move on. Justin Steele will be getting the start for the Cubs. Young left-hander, 26 years old, out of Mississippi. He'll be going up against another Mississippi boy, Mr. Brandon Woodruff. I mean, when was the last time you had 2 starters from Mississippi playing a Brewers-Cubs game? This would be a whole lot of fun. First of all, let's start with Woodruff. What do you expect?
More of the
from Brandon?
same. One of the most consistent guys in the big leagues, right? I mean, he's going to pound the fastball, both the 2 and 4-seamer to all quadrants, and then he's going to use that secondary stuff. I think he's going to use the curveball a little bit more than the slider, and then he's got that changeup that he's really come along. That's really come along and developed. So he's going to be aggressive as usual, attack, and I have really good feelings about this game. Although I did have good feelings about the opening day game as well, but I
There's
let's not
162 games, Vinny. You're allowed to have good feelings about every game.
You're right. So I feel like the Brewers should take this one for sure.
Well, let's talk about Justin Steele briefly. Last year, made his big league debut. He was the swingman out of the Cubs bullpen, gave them a spot start as needed. A year ago, he went 4-4. He went 4-4 with a 4.26 ERA, 20 games, 9 of them were starts. He threw 57 innings last year, had 59 strikeouts, but also allowed 12 home runs, which is the big thing for him. As for Big Woo, a reminder, 5th in Cy Young voting last year. He was 9-10 despite that. A 2.56 ERA, and he made 30 starts to lead the Brewers last year, 179 innings. I mean, he can get up to 200 and maybe get flirt with 200 at some point this season. But for Big Woo, 211 strikeouts last year, a new career high for him as well. Let's talk about the lineup, though, that we saw today for opening day and what we could expect for tomorrow. Being a lefty on the mound, might see some changes here and there. But how about a debut for Andrew McCutchen? Going 2 for 5, hitting the ball hard 3 times. In fact, the hardest ball he hit was caught in right center. It was a very encouraging debut for Andrew McCutchen.
I mean, we talked about this in June and July last year. He was one of the better hitters in all of baseball, not just against lefties either, right? He was playing every day, both-handed hitters. Then that knee flared up, and then, obviously the season went downhill a little bit. But my goodness, what a lightning bat. I mean, all you got to do is watch him take a swing, and man, he is quick. He's short to the baseball, and that was a really encouraging start to the season for him. Really important that he stays healthy as well as Locaine. But I think he's going to have a good season, really good season. I thought that was a tremendous sign. I was a little bit iffy on him at first, but I'm really encouraged by this first game that he had.
And he got after it, too. 2 pitches in the first AB, and then he swung at the first pitch in both his second and third ABs against Kyle Hendricks. Wasn't wasting any time, and he hit the ball hard all 3 plate appearances, which was cool to watch. Hunter Renfroe in his debut with the Brewers, he went 1 for 4. We talked about Caratini hitting a double, just arriving, and Mike Brasso came off the bench, drew a walk, and also had a strikeout in a big spot with the tying run on second base. The main guys were around. How about the play, though, by Colton Wong on the windy pop-up in shallow center? He made his presence felt with the glove. There wasn't much defense to really talk about aside from that play, but overall, it's just a 5-4. If it was a 5-4 loss any other day of the year, you would quickly forget about it. But because it was opening day,
and because it was the Cubs, too, at Wrigley, so it's all... That all plays into it. Yeah, talk about that play over the shoulder that Colton Wong made. I was like, wow, that is one of the best plays that he has made as a Brewer, because that inning would have gotten really, really ugly if that ball dropped, and it would have gotten ugly for Corbin Burnes. So he was able to kind of survive this outing, I think Burnes was, and it wasn't, obviously this hopefully is his worst outing of the year, but it could have been a lot worse, especially if that ball would have dropped.
It was an epic play, and he slapped the gold plate on his glove. That's gold, man. That's a 2-time Gold Glover in Colton Wong, and he should be on his way to a third, hopefully this season for the Brewers. Any final thoughts before we wrap up for today and get ready for more baseball? If we get to play today, there is some pretty sketchy weather in the forecast today.
Clear
Friday.
This one, regroup, go back, get them tomorrow. Kind of lean on Woody tomorrow and score a few runs for him for once.
That would be great, but hey, easier said than done, especially in a snowy Wrigley Field. So we'll see what happens if they do get some baseball today. If they do get to play, it's a 1:20 first pitch again down at Wrigley, and coverage begins on Bally Sports Wisconsin at 12:30. Well, that'll do it for this episode. We hope you all have a great weekend. We'll be back on Monday with a Mailbag Monday edition. It's been a few weeks since we've had a true Mailbag Monday. We got a little more to talk about now. So Monday we'll have a Mailbag edition. So send in your questions now. You can follow us on Twitter. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see our Twitter handles. If you're listening, he's at Vinny Rattino. I'm at Dom_Catronio. It's in the show notes as well. So we appreciate every single one of you for listening today. Have a great weekend, everybody. Baseball is back. The Brewers, though, are 0-1, but it does not matter. 1:20 today, first pitch against the Cubs. Until then, keep on swinging.
You are Locked On Brewers, your daily Milwaukee Brewers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.